This is episode 129 of That Shakespeare Life.
Hello, I'm Stanley Wells. I'm honorary president of the Shakespeare Birthplace Trust. Another great method to studying the life of William Shakespeare includes listening to this. It's That Shakespeare Life with my friend Cassidy Cash.
Welcome to That Shakespeare Life with Cassidy Cash. Cassidy believes that if you desire to successfully learn or perform Shakespeare's plays, then understanding the real life and history of William Shakespeare himself is a must. That Shakespeare Life is the podcast that helps you go beyond the curtain of some of Shakespeare's most iconic works and explore the world of early modern England as Shakespeare would have lived it, learning from the writers, historians, and performers who know it best. And now, here's Cassidy.
William Shakespeare was memorialized after his death by those who knew him best as simply William Shakespeare, a poet. In the 16th century, to be great with words, and specifically a writer of poems, was one of the highest honors which could be paid to an artist, including Shakespeare. Throughout his career as a playwright, William Shakespeare would complete no less than 154 sonnets, many of which have caused debate throughout the centuries since as to precisely what they're about or to whom they're dedicated. It was considered a common way for someone in the theater industry to make something of a side income during outbreaks of plague to seek payment through the publishing of sonnets. When it comes to Shakespeare's sonnets, however, it seems that several of the 16th century publications of his poems were done without his permission and considered pirated editions of his work. Our guest this week knows more than anyone about the sonnets of Shakespeare, and we are honored to welcome Sir Stanley Wells to the show this week to explain the history of Shakespeare's sonnets and tell us which one, if he was forced to choose just one, would be his favorite sonnet. Professor Sir Stanley Wells, Commander of the Order of the British Empire, Fellow of the Royal Society of Literature, is a former life trustee and former chairman of the Shakespeare Birthplace Trust, Emeritus Professor of Shakespeare Studies at the University of Birmingham, and Honorary Emeritus Governor of the Royal Shakespeare Company, of which he was for many years Vice Chairman. He holds a PhD of the University of Birmingham, is an honorary fellow of Balliol College, Oxford, and University College London. He holds honorary doctorates from Furman University, South Carolina, and from the universities of Munich, Hull, Durham, Warwick, Marburg, and Craiova. He received a knighthood in the 2016 Queen's Birthday Honors in recognition of his services to Shakespeare scholarship. He has published extensively on Shakespeare, his plays, including multiple editions of Shakespeare's works for Cambridge, Oxford, and Penguin Shakespeare. I invite you to the show notes of today's episode to explore a more extensive library of Sir Stanley Wells' publications as a great place to learn more about William Shakespeare. His most recent publications include Shakespeare's Tragedies, a very short introduction. Together with Paul Edmondson, he has edited Shakespeare Beyond Doubt, The Shakespeare Circle, an alternative biography, and All the Sonnets of Shakespeare, which is forthcoming in September of 2020 for Cambridge University Press. Hello, Sir Stanley. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
If Shakespeare was primarily a playwright, why did he also write sonnets?
Well, he was primarily a playwright for most of his life, but he was writing at a time when all plays were written in verse. The prose was used in plays, but there's hardly any plays written entirely in prose. It was just the convention of the time, just as nowadays plays are written in prose normally, but we still occasionally get poetic drama, though less frequently than we used to do. He uses sonnet form sometimes in his plays. For example, the prologue to Romeo and Juliet is written as a sonnet, so is the second prologue that introduces Act 2. And famously, the meeting of Romeo and Juliet, when they first meet each other, is a sonnet, followed by the first four lines of another sonnet. So it was nothing unusual for him to be writing in verse, and particularly in sonnets. But of course, he also wrote sonnets for himself, as a sort of poetic meditation, I think. And some of his sonnets seem to have been addressed to friends. For example, in 1598, a book appeared called Pallidus Tamia, Wit's Treasury, written by a literary critic called Francis Mears, in which Mears refers to Shakespeare's sonnets among his private friends, he says, which implies that Mears already knew about that Shakespeare was writing sonnets, even though no independent sonnets by Shakespeare had been published at that date.
Excited to see more? Subscribe today at cassidycash.com/experience to watch this entire interview, bonus archaeological footage, and documentaries, and more, all about the life of William Shakespeare. I'll see you inside.